Hey guys, it's Drake again with the RPG Construct, doing another how-to video for Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition. Today we're going to be talking about how magic works in this game. It's very different than anything that I've dealt with before, and in this particular episode we're just going to talk about magic, learning spells, how to cast them, things like that. We're not going to go into any specific spells or anything like that. That's a whole nother video. This one's probably going to be 15 or 20 minutes just with that information. So we're kind of going to go through it, and hopefully we'll learn something together. So the first thing, okay, and let me just go to it. I'm just going to read it because it is, I don't know how to say it, just how they start it in the book is more perfect than I could do. So let me just read the first 3 sentences of this chapter. The magic of the Cthulhu mythos stems from the unfathomable alien intelligences that reside outside of humanity's ability to comprehend. What may be the pinnacle of science can easily be interpreted as magic by the ignorant. What is certain is that those who delve into such matters rarely come away unchanged, usually for the worse. Manipulating time and space is not a thing to be done lightly, and there can be grave consequences for those investigators who dabble in the things best left alone. Right? So that is much better than I could ever say it, so good job to the person who wrote the book. So, okay, what we're going to be covering, what spells are like in this game. The tomes or books about this mythos. How spells are learned, how they're cast, what these ancient tomes are, and then kind of the mythos magic versus the occult magic. These are 2 separate things, okay? So first thing, tomes, writings, books, some of them handwritten, some of them printed, okay? If somebody gets their hands on one of these ancient tomes, okay, you can learn stuff from them, obviously. Now, that being said, most of the knowledge gained in this game is through tomes. Okay, it takes time to learn, and that varies greatly based on the tome. But there are some good ones and there are some bad ones. There are some tomes that you will pick up, you will open it, and it will destroy your mind, and you're done. Okay, but there are some that are just less than that, and some obviously in between. The first thing, when you find a tome, most things are learned, as I was saying, through, let's see, what does it say? Written instructions and following rules. Okay, basically arcane lore. Think about a wizard in your typical RPG. They read scrolls and they read tomes and they learn the knowledge about the arcane and how to manipulate it. Same deal. Okay, you have to research and learn how to do this. So the first thing when you get a book, you have to determine if you can even read the language, and you have a language skill. You also can refer to page 66 in your rule book, and it has a whole big thing on language. Okay, so first thing you have to do is figure out if you can even read it. All right. Now remember, just looking at this can destroy you. If you have a bad roll or something like that. Picking up one of these books is very dangerous, and the game makes you pretty aware of it. All right. So, I said you have to first figure out if you can read it. So, how do you learn what's in this book? Okay. There's an initial reading, and then there's a full study. When you first open the book, you just kind of give it kind of like a cursory glance. Okay. Some things can be gleaned from it. All right. When you do the initial reading, you do a 1d100 language roll. All right. If you fail, you have a bit of an inkling of what's in it, but not a full comprehension. Okay. You really don't learn anything, but you can also push this roll. Okay. But you will lose sanity if you fail. Okay. So if you do just an initial read through and you fail it, that's okay. You're not going to suffer anything detrimental. But if you push it, you lock yourself in a room and you, overnight, and you just delve into this and you still fail, then you might lose your brain a little bit. So the next option is a full study. Now, when you really delve into one of these books and you really spend time to do it, and it varies from book to book. It could be months, it could be days or weeks to really study this. You get reference materials, all that stuff. Once that full study is over, okay, you will know what's in that book, and that's up to the keeper's discretion. Or in the keeper's guide, there is a bunch of books, the names of books and what's in them. So just for inspiration, you can use those. So when you are finished with this full study of these books, you compare the rating, the mythos rating of the book to your Cthulhu mythos rating, okay? And each book has a different rating. Obviously, the more, difficult or powerful the book is, the more difficult it is going to be to beat the roll. So I just wrote these down on my notes here. When you're done with that hard study, if your mythos skill is less than the mythos of the book, okay, you gain your Cthulhu mythos points indicated by that book. And every book is going to have, if you made a full study for it, you're going to gain this many points, okay, to your Cthulhu mythos score, okay? If your mythos skill is greater than the book mythos, you increase your mythos skill up to the initial kind of read-through. And this is explained for each book. It has a full study, you get this. It has a cursory view or initial read-through, this. So if you fail it, you still learn something. You just don't learn everything from it, okay? So remember, when it comes to spells and stuff like that, you can push these, okay? You can push these spells or these knowledge. Next, once you've done a hard study of a book, a full study of a book, you can use them as reference. If you know that this book is about this particular thing, you can spend 1d4 hours and just read through this book, and you can use it to find a specific bit of information about whatever this book is about, okay? It would make sense that the keeper would put a book in there that was relevant to what you guys are doing. So once you've done a hard study, you can use it as a reference piece at that point. And it only takes 1d4 hours, so it's not too bad. And with that, you would roll a d100 against your mythos skill. And if you succeed, you find the fact that you were there. Now also, think about this. If you do a full study of one of these books, it may not only increase your Cthulhu mythos skill, it might increase other skills. This is at the keeper's discretion, but history, archaeology, chemistry, psychology, there could be a million different things, but that's really up to the keeper. Some of the books will specifically say, add this, add that, but you, of course, as the keeper can do whatever you want with it. And this, of course, is reconciled at the end of the session, just like everything else. During the game, you don't add increased skills or anything like that. This is all at the end, okay? So remember that there is, this kind of Cthulhu mythos, but there's also the occult. There's other types of spells. Everything you do doesn't have to come from this universe, this particular, Cthulhu genre, okay? There are other spells, sometimes fake, sometimes not, that you can do as well. And you would learn that through occult books. Just learning spells and other things, because there are powers that we don't understand beyond just what this game is about. So at the keeper's discretion, you can include those as well. It's optional. You don't have to, but keep in mind there are things like that as well. So when it comes to spells, right, you have magic points. Think about it like mana, okay? These are expended when you cast spells. It's not the only thing that's expended, but it's expended. So every investigator starts out with 1/5 of their power as their magic points. So we'll go back to that same 50 power rating. Your magic points would be 10, okay? Which, looking at the spells, is very low, all right? So when you drop to 0, that doesn't mean that you can't cast spells. That just means that now those magic points come out of your hit points. So if you try to cast a 12 magic point spell and you only have 10, you're going to take 2 of that out of your hit points. It's a risk and reward type thing. Now, some magic actually leeches the magic points and the power out of unwilling people around, and the players as well as any NPCs are going to get headaches and feel pain, especially if it's a large amount, like over 10. It's something that for a narrative purpose you're going to feel like drained. Okay, so, and with regards to magic points, you'll recover 1 magic point per hour. So if you have 10, you have a long rest, say 8 hours, you'll get 8 of those back. Okay? Pretty simple. So how do you learn a spell? Okay, there's 3 ways to learn a spell in this game. The first one is from studying books. How does that work? Well, when you're learning a spell from a book, it usually takes 2d6 weeks to do that. Unless you're coming in with knowledge, which you can work with your keeper on. But if you're starting new, 2d6 weeks. So it could quite possibly take you 3 months to learn a spell. You must at least make an initial reading of the book. And up to your GM's discretion, it can be just automatically that you have this spell, or if the keeper wants to be difficult or thinks it's a difficult thing, you have to make a hard intelligence roll, which means if your intelligence is a 50, you have to roll a 25 or below in order to be successful in learning that spell and fully understanding that spell and able to cast it. So, and again, you can push this roll for learning it, but if you push the roll, there can be sanity points lost at the keeper's discretion. So, the next thing is you can learn a spell from another person. It can take, according to the book, it's 1d8 days, so it's a lot faster. That person who already has that understanding can sit down with you and teach you and help you fully understand. You could do it in a day, but you have to find somebody willing to share that information. Okay, but from a narrative standpoint, that could be fun too. Helpful NPCs, stuff like that. And finally, if one of these godly creatures from the Cthulhu mythos telepathically infuses your brain with this information, it's rare, but it could happen. But it's at least 1d6 sanity points, if not more, depending on what it is. And again, same thing. When you are learning it from another person or from an entity in the mythos, you are still going to have to do that hard intelligence roll to make sure that you grasp it. Okay, even if you don't, there's always options to just do it later or try again or go back to reading or whatever. Just because you fail it once doesn't mean that you can't. But if you fail it once and you push it, you fail it again, you're going to take some sanity damage. Okay, so when it comes to casting a spell, okay, in the spell kind of grimoire at the back, it's very small, and you can get companions or volumes of extra spells later. But every spell has a cost. That can be magic points, sanity points, and or power points, and it specifically says it in the spell. Okay, and usually it's like, it'll have a set amount for magic points, like 10, 12, 24, whatever. But it, when it comes to sanity, it'll have like 1d6 or something like that. It's not a set amount you actually have to roll for it. So you could just take 1, you could take 6 in a lot of these. And some of these spells also have, physical components that you have to use, semantic components. You may have to, there's one particular spell that you actually have to drink this certain brew in order to cast it. Your mind has to be in a certain place. So it's not just you learn the spell, you cast it. Just like regular RPGs like 5th edition, there are ingredients that you have to get a lot of times. To cast a spell, you have to be free of movement. Keep that in mind. And the catch is, the first time that you cast a spell, okay, you have to make a casting roll, but just the first time, okay? You basically, let's see here. You have to make a hard power success in order to cast that the first time. So if your power is not that high, it could be very difficult to do. So someone who wants to delve into magic is going to want to focus on power and intelligence. Those should be your really high stats because that's going to give you more leeway as far as what you can roll, advantage, and stuff like that. So this is the interesting thing. If you're trying to cast a spell the first time, you do that hard power roll for success. If you fail, okay, you can push that. Okay, you can push the spell. If you succeed on the push, it's all good, right? The spell goes off like it's supposed to. If you fail on the push, the spell still goes off like it's supposed to. Crazy, right? It still goes off. You still succeed on casting the spell. But instead of the regular components, say 10 magic points, 6 sanity, or 1d6 sanity, you multiply your components, basically, by 1d6. So you could quite easily, if you rolled a 6 on that, have 60 magic points deducted and 36 sanity points. If you only have 15 hit points, you're done. You're dead. You just killed yourself. In one shot, you're dead. So, like I said, one roll can absolutely destroy you. Also, even if you have that many hit points, if you lose 36 sanity points, you're insane. You know? So it just kind of snowballs. One bad roll can snowball into a lot of different things. The kind of final, thing that I wanted to go through on with magic is you're probably going to be able, if you're familiar, you'll be able to notice if somebody's casting a spell. Now, also, spells, I forgot to say, spells can be instantaneous. They can take a few seconds to cast. They can take a few days, a few weeks, or more. It's really up to the spell. The more powerful stuff is obviously going to take more time. So keep that in mind. But if it's just in combat or something like that, you can kind of do a spot hidden check to see if you can notice that somebody is casting a spell. And let's just say for the purposes, it takes 3 rounds to cast this spell, or a game minute, or something like that, maybe 10 rounds. If you notice that and you hit the person, you shoot them or you hit them with something to break their concentration, you can disrupt that spell. You absolutely can. But if it happens to you or the NPC, you still are responsible for the components of that spell. The magic is still, if you say, I'm going to cast that spell, and then somebody shoots you while you're trying to cast it, you still lose the magic points and or the sanity for casting that spell. It can happen to others. It can happen to you. So if you're going to cast something, make sure you find a nice cozy spot, because if somebody that knows, about this magic might single you out and go after you. So just keep that in mind. And as I said in the very beginning, guys, non-mythos magic is okay. You can work on that. So yeah, what magic is, how you learn it, how long it takes, how to learn a spell, how to cast a spell. It's all really, I know it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's the same mechanics for learning a spell in something like Dungeons & Dragons. It's just specifically laid out for you. And if you're going into something where somebody has knowledge, they might already know several of these spells. Okay? They might already know 2 or 3 spells or something like that. Their magic points may be huge, right? So that's about it for magic, guys. I hope that makes sense. I hope that gives you an idea of how magic works in this game. And in the next one, I'm going to be talking about spells themselves, ranges, durations, things like that. And I'm going to show you in the book a couple of examples of them. So hope that makes sense, guys. And I'll see you next time.